Hi, Jose Monkey. I hear you can find people, right? Okay now, find me.
You asked me to figure out where this video was recorded, so I did. Hi, I'm Jose Monkey, and I find people who ask to be found. I've told you guys before about how people wrongly assume that I can only find places in the United States. And among those people, perhaps my favorite subset are the people who think that Africa would be just impossible and I could never find anyone there. Of course, if they took the time to check, they would discover that I have already found people in Kenya, Guinea, Rwanda, Somalia, and South Africa. As you may have guessed, this video is from a country in Africa, and I'm pretty excited about it because it's one that I have not yet done. So what can we see? After a brief introduction where this person asks to be found, they show us the surroundings, which look like a residential neighborhood. On the corner here we can see some utility poles and what looks like electrical equipment surrounded by this wall. I also noticed that the wall behind the electrical equipment was a different color than the rest of it. That part is kind of orange, but the rest is kind of white or off-white. This looked to me like somebody was painting that wall and realized they couldn't get to the part that was behind the electrical equipment, and they were just like, oh well. As the camera turns, we can see this intersection here, and then the person continues to turn the camera and moves out into the street to show us the view down the street. By the way, I noticed some satellite dishes on the houses here, and they all appear to be pointing in this direction, so I made a note of that. And that's really about it. Okay, I'm going to be referring to these houses a lot, so I'm going to give each one of them a label so that it's easier to talk about them. This first one that we see, I'm going to call Building A. It's kind of a white house that has this brick facade in certain spots. It's the one that's very close to the utility pole with the wall around it. And it's on the corner of the intersection that's closest to where the video was recorded. Just across the intersection from that, we have what I'll call Building B. That is a white house that has a black roof. It has these very distinctive corner windows. We can also see that in the balcony parts of this building, it looks like it has either darker siding or some other kind of facade there. I also noted the peaked roof and the solar panels. Then a bit farther down, we have this house which I'll call Building C. That's kind of a bluish gray color, and it has these tall, narrow windows with the white trim. Okay, so where do we start here? Now, I sometimes find that using a reverse image search tool can be helpful, not necessarily because you think you're going to get the exact location, but because sometimes you can use a reverse image search to get similar looking locations, and that can be helpful to figure out where you are. So I put some screenshots of the houses that we see here into Google Lens to see what I'd get. And I started getting a lot of hits for real estate listings in Nigeria. Specifically, I got a house that looked similar to House B. That listing was for a place called Osapa. That is in Lekki in Lagos. So I went to check it out. Of course, none of these real estate listings give you the exact address. Usually, if you're lucky, they'll just tell you like what neighborhood it's in and what things it's close to. So I had to look around a bit, but I eventually found some houses that looked like they might be the one from that listing. And when I did, I realized that that was probably not the right place because none of the other details matched. But while looking at those houses, I did learn a couple things. I noticed that the satellite dishes in that area all appeared to be pointing in the same direction, and that was east. Thinking back to the satellite dishes in the video, if this was anywhere near there, then chances are the satellite dishes probably pointed in about the same direction. If that were the case, then that meant that the street that we see in the video is a north-south street, and that the view that we get at the beginning of the video is facing west. And even though that wasn't the right neighborhood, I also saw a couple other things that made me think I was close. The style of the houses looked right, but also we could see that the stonework pattern on the road was very similar, and some of the utility poles looked very much like what I saw in the video. So I did some more searching, and I came up with some more real estate listings, and I eventually found this one, which also looked like House B from the video. Again, I had no address, but I had the name of the development that it was in. It was someplace called Oral Estate. That was also in Lekki, and it was about 4 or 5 miles or 6 or 7 kilometers away from the spot I had been looking at. Now, I would love to tell you that I went to that location and just immediately found it, but guys, this is just the beginning of the story. Because when I went to go check it out, I hit a bit of a snag. This is a gated community, and there is no Google Street View inside of the gate. I knew that the location might be on the other side of that gate, but I was on the outside looking in, so I had to do some serious detective work to figure it out. The map entry for this place on Google Maps has over 600 user-submitted photos. Some of those document the construction of the houses in this area and maybe are from the people who built them, and others just appear to be from residents of that area. So I started looking through all of those photos to try to see if I could find anything that looked familiar based on the video. And I looked for a long time, but eventually I found this photo. The photo was a little bit older, but I was pretty sure that this was Building B. And I thought that this building was Building C, the blue-gray house with the narrow windows. Okay, what about House A, the other house we can see in the video? Well, that appears to be out of frame if it's here, but we could see some utility poles, but the utility poles didn't look exactly the same as they did in the video. And also, there's no wall surrounding the utility poles like there was in the video. But like I said, it was a bit older, so I thought maybe things had changed. So I kept looking, and then I found this photo. That is from pretty much the same spot, and you can see that the utility poles have been changed, and there is now a wall here, although the wall has not yet been painted. Remember what I said about somebody painting that wall and skipping the section behind the electrical equipment? Pretty sure I was right about that. Okay, so that is the wall that is next to Building A in the video. So if we've got Building A, Building B, and Building C, then that means the person was right over here. So game over, right? We can stop looking. No, we cannot. Because guys, even though I was sure that that was the right spot, I did not know where that photo was taken. I knew the rough area, but I was not prepared to stop until I could put a pin in the map in exactly the spot where the video was recorded. So I kept digging. Okay, let's look at another photo I found. In this one, we can see a wall and a utility pole, much like what's in the video, so I was tempted to think that it was the same one at first. But it's a different one. But I noted a couple important things here. We have this building here that's kind of tan with a white stripe at the top. I'm going to call that building D. And if you look way down the street here, you can see what looks like the back of the gatehouse that's the entrance to this community. Just to be sure, I dug around and found another photo that shows the back of the gatehouse from a closer perspective. Okay, so what does that tell us? If this new location that shows this house D and this new utility pole is behind that gatehouse, then that means it is on this road that we see here. That road runs north-south, and I was looking for a north-south road. So this could be the one I'm looking for. But I needed to prove that building D was on the same street as A, B, and C. So I kept digging. Next I found this photo. This wall that we can see near the utility poles in this photo is the one that we see in that second location. This building is the one that I just called building D. Tan building, white stripe. We can also see that building D is number 20, by the way. But that's not all, because if we look closely, I was pretty sure that we had building C, building B, and possibly building A. I also made a note of this very tall building in the back, which I'm going to call F for now. Ha! You forgot building E. No, I didn't, because this next photo I'm going to show you is from a new building that I'm going to call building E. Building E is a bit higher than the surrounding buildings. And this photo taken from the window of building E shows us some of the same buildings from that last photo. We've got building A, B, C, and D. And that tall building I just labeled F. We also have this white building in the foreground very close to building E. It's got a black roof and these paneled windows with the white trim. Let's call that one building G. Okay, so I didn't know what this new building, the tall one, building E, looked like from the outside. All I knew was that it had windows that had kind of this dark colored trim that opened out to the side. It appeared to be pretty far north on the street, so I assumed it was close to the gatehouse. I found this photo from outside the gates that shows a tall building on the east side of the street. I suspected that was building E. Those windows look like what we saw in the photo. Okay, so now that I knew what building E looked like and where it was relative to the gate, I could try to find other photos of that building. And I actually went back to one of the previous photos that I showed you, and I could see that building E is in that photo as well. We can also see that it's right next to another building with a black roof and white trim paneled windows, which is the one that I just labeled G a moment ago. Okay, that's a lot of buildings, but I felt like I had enough data that I could puzzle out the location. If we look at the satellite view and start at the gate to the community and start heading south, we can see that tall building near the gatehouse that I called building E. The one next to it is a place that's called the M's Court, which is what I had labeled as building G, the one with the paneled windows. Here's a photo of M's Court. It looks very similar. As we continue to move south, we have this intersection here where we see a patch of grass next to the building that I called D. That's the tan building with the white stripe. And that means this building across the street from it is building C, the bluish-gray building with the white narrow windows. So if we continue to move south to the next intersection, and that is where we will find building A and building B. And if we move south just a bit more, we see that tall building that we found that I labeled as building F, which I learned is a place called Ajid's Court. Here's a photo of that building. And if you put that all together, then that means that this intersection right here, guys, that was it. You were at this intersection in Lekki, in Lagos State, Nigeria. I pretty much showed you all the photos already that I used to confirm it, but in collecting the photos to make this video, I also found one other photo. This is very clearly the intersection that we see in the video. So there's one more. Special thanks, by the way, to all the people who uploaded photos to Google Maps. Specifically, I'd like to thank Linda Sawyerr, who took many of the photos I looked at. They were super helpful. Okay, it's time to check which previous location was closest to this one. This time it was in Season 1, Episode 104. That was in Ratoma in Conakry, Guinea. While that was the closest previous location to this one, it's not what I'd call particularly close, because that is almost 1,200 miles or around 1,900 kilometers away from this spot. By comparison, that would be like if I found somebody in Denver, Colorado, and said that the closest previous location was Cleveland, Ohio. It's crazy. That's all for now, guys. Sorry about the really long video, but it took a lot to explain it. If anybody else wants me to find them, record a video where you say, "Find me, Jose Monkey," or something like that on camera, or hold up a sign that says something similar. And don't forget to tag me in a comment on that video.